The Constitutional Court's ruling that dismissed the IEC's application to postpone the elections, and the court ruling that the elections be held between October 27th and November 1st. Can we expect a free and fair poll with the current election timetable being amended? Researcher at the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa, Thembelani Mazibuko, joins us now. Talk to this question. Thembelani, good to have you with us, and thank you for joining us on In Focus. You have been watching, I suppose, the movement and the decisions that are coming out of the courts, as well as the actions and processes that are being followed by the IEC. What is the impact, do you think, of the amendment to the election timetable on the credibility of our democratic process of electing local government leaders? Is the IEC's approach sound in principle, and does it follow good practice?
It does. The IEC has been very transparent with regards to everything that it has done, and in terms of why it is doing so. Right from the very beginning, when it announced the Moseneke inquiry, the IEC set out the reasons as to why it is holding this inquiry in terms of the COVID pandemic which might ensure that the elections, which are initially scheduled for the 27th of October, not be free and fair. So ever since then, we've had the court has made its decision in that no, the election cannot be postponed. But in terms of how the IEC has conducted itself, the IEC has very much stuck to the letter and as well as to the spirit of the law in following the recommendations of the courts and also indeed setting up the commission.
There are, of course, key players in the process who are saying the process and the system currently poses a danger to our democratic governance in the way that is being handled. In fact, some of them are threatening legal action with allegations that the system is set up to favor and suit a particular party more than the others.
Yes, there are people who have various vested interests, most chief amongst which some political parties, especially the opposition parties, which saw this as an opportunity to perhaps win municipalities that they would otherwise not win because of the ANC not contesting. But I think it's important to filter out the noise as well as to understand the motivations why some political actors may be making the kinds of pronouncements that they are making. One cannot blame them per se because politics is about power. The whole point of contesting elections is to gain access to power. So the parties themselves perhaps are not at fault as political actors. However, when you look at the law, the Municipal Structures Act, the law is very clear in terms of under what circumstances the electoral calendar may be changed, and the Municipal Structures Act says very clearly that if a proclaimed date is nullified by a court, then the election calendar can be amended. And that is what is happening now. The court also said that there has to be an opportunity for voter registration. But you can't have, in order to have voter registration, those self-same voters may want to stand in the ward within which they are registering for. Hence, the IEC reopened candidate nominations. Another way to look at it is like this. If someone turned 18 in the last month or so, was 17 when the date was proclaimed, but turned 18 the last couple of months, they are now eligible to register to vote. But now, they are also, because they are South African citizens, are also allowed and have a constitutional right to stand for candidature. Hence, one must look at the idea of voter registration and candidate nomination in tandem. They are, like Commissioner Masuku described, a train that moves together, and one goes along with the other. With regards to what has happened with one of the political parties not being able to register candidates, yes, this decision favors them, it does benefit them, but I also want to stress this decision also benefits all political parties. there's a certain political party whose candidate in Nelson Mandela Bay Metro was involved, for example, in a car accident. They may want to change that candidate, the Democratic Alliance, for for those reasons, and for reasons that they may not be able to, potentially may not be able to serve. So all political parties now have the opportunity to change their candidates.
Current criticism of the IEC, of course, follows the criticism in the previous elections in 2019, where some parties alleged voter fraud because of the system, the registration system at the voting stations being dysfunctional at some point, and people being able to, others suggested, vote twice. Now, this criticism falling very strong on the heels of that previous allegation. And what does this do for this particular democratic institution?
So I think it's important to recognize that organizing elections is a very difficult task, logistically, operationally, at the best of times. We should not conflate perhaps logistical or perhaps or technical errors with widespread systematic or perhaps underhanded activity. Of course, the IEC is the one institution that plays in the most political space in a society, and that is elections. So a lot of aspersions by political actors who have their own agendas are going to be cast upon the IEC. The issue is how the IEC responds to it. And to be honest, if the IEC responds, they will always be accused of favoring one political party over the other. The IEC yesterday was at pains to say that when the ANC initially came and served lawyers' letters and said, we want to reopen the candidate nomination because we could not submit candidates, the IEC refused. They called it an ad hoc opening of the process. So it's important to recognize that the IEC actually refused, because you can't make exceptions for one party. What has happened here is completely different. There is no election date as things stand because it was nullified by the court. And because there's no election date, there has to be a new calendar. The court says new voters have to be registered, and with the right to register to vote in your community is the right to stand for candidature in your community. So one must look at these incidents, if you may call it that, on a case-by-case basis, as opposed to painting it in a broad brush, perhaps because some people with vested interests want to have a certain narrative with regards to how the IEC is conducting itself.
It's a decision by the court that certainly favors the African National Congress, gives them an opportunity to fix their mess, pretty much that they created themselves, and there's no excuse for that. However, is the decision in itself adequate to uphold the citizens' right to participate in this election?
It definitely is, because what this decision does is it extends voter registration. So people who were not eligible to register, could not register for whatever reasons, are now able to register. They are now also able to stand as candidates, because the two go hand in hand. I also want to mention that other parties previously have also not been able to register their candidates in time, famously the IFP and the NFP. So this is not the first time this is happening. It's not the last time. I agree with you. The ANC was fortunate for this confluence of events, the commission, the Mosneke inquiry, and the court judgment to lead to a decision, a case where the date that was proclaimed by the minister, an ANC minister, is now being null and void, opening the door to a resubmission of candidates. So certainly the ANC benefits, but potentially all political parties are going to potentially resubmit their candidates for whatever reason. It's not just the ANC party, it is other candidates as well.
That was research at the Electoral Institute for Sustainable Democracy in Africa, Thembelani Mazibuko. Appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us on In Focus tonight. When we